This is MindCraft, a podcast series in which we aim to destigmatize mental health one podcast at a time. In the next 3 episodes, you can learn more about mental health literacy and mental health first aids in the classroom.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to MindCraft, a podcast series through which we aim to destigmatize mental health one classroom at a time.
I'm Ákos. With me here is Vanchhit, and in today's podcast, we will discuss mental health literacy in schools and first aid skills in mental health. For that, we have invited Dr. Marucia, a well-being coordinator with years of experience in counseling.
Marucia is a psychologist born in the south of Brazil. She has completed her training in Brazil and Canada with a postdoc at the University of Lisbon in 2015. As a psychologist, she has 2 main fields of expertise: vocational and career psychology and clinical psychology.
Marucia has been working for over 20 years, both as a researcher and as a therapist or career advisor. She has experience with issues of academic adjustment, development, personal development in young adulthood, the difficulties faced in transitioning from school to college, and from college to the world of work. Marucia now works as a student well-being coordinator at Forward College in Lisbon, and she is also a clinical psychologist at the University of Lisbon.
Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for inviting me. I think this is a really special and important topic, and I'm willing to contribute.
To start off, there is a question that interests us the most. What are some effective ways to promote mental health literacy among teachers and school staff, enabling them to better understand and address mental health challenges in students or in schools or in the classroom?
Okay. I think the first thing we need to think about and actually know is that mental health is not some people's problem. You know, it's not something that we need to address to help people that struggle with mental health. Mental health is for us. It's for me, it's for you, it's for the teachers, it's for everybody. I mean, we all need to take care of our mental health in order to be able to enjoy the most of our experiences, improve our capacities, our skills, and be able to connect with people and have positive relationships. And this starts really early. That's why we are interested in talking about it in school environments and how to help people from an early age to take care of themselves and to improve their mental health. So this is really important. And literacy, it's one of the keys to do that. I mean, knowledge is actually ability to take action. I mean, the better we will do if the better we know. So providing literacy, and one way to provide that literacy is really have a conception of mental health education in schools. And that's not only talking about diseases, but it's really talking about good habits, good health, and good mental health habits, so they can prevent mental health issues from happening long life, thinking about a long life experience. So if we know more about it, and unfortunately, we have heard about it from COVID pandemic situation. You know, we would like not needing that to be able to talk about mental health, but okay, if that's the context. Now we really talk about it a lot more than before. We are really interested in knowing how people are dealing with their experiences, and especially on school and work environments that has been really increasing frequency in the way we really address mental health issues. So in school environments, as you were asking me, Ákos, I think we really need to address three main dimensions. It's providing literacy, really empower people, and people meaning students, parents, and teachers with knowledge and skills, in first aid skills, for instance. The second dimension is really have ways to counsel and provide mental health interventions if needed, even inside the school environment, as we think now in the work environments as well. And the third dimension is having the strong awareness that mental health issues are treatable. And if I struggle with something at one point of my life, that really doesn't mean that I need to struggle with that same thing all my life. No, there are treatments available. There are ways to get, to feel better and to get more positive coping strategies to deal with those situations. So, and we can learn that really early, that mental health is for everybody. I can take care of my own mental health in a way, and I can get help if I need, and if I feel that I don't have the resources myself to deal with those situations. And most of all, it's treatable. I can feel better, and I really can enjoy and be able to profit from my experiences if I take care of myself. So the literacy is really empowering the stakeholders involved, especially parents and teachers, to know better and therefore to do better for the students.
What do you think are ways for teachers who have been already practicing for multiple years to learn about mental health? Because, for example, I can imagine like reading multiple books from authors, but sometimes they just don't have the time, and obviously they would like some leisure activities as well, not just thinking about school all the time. How do you think that they can actually get knowledge that is reliable and practical?
I think it's a really nice question. I mean, sometimes we live in a moment that has information available for everybody from everywhere. And this is good, but maybe not that good because we need to separate what is reliable and scientific and useful information and what is myths and stereotyped information and gossip and, unrealistic misconceptions about anything, including mental health. So, when we speak on literacy and mental health education, we are really talking about training and having inside the school environment a space to learn about it, to recognize signs of mental health problems or difficulties, to learn how to deal with different situations, happening with students, with teachers themselves. They are really also vulnerable to mental health difficulties and suffering. So I think the better way to provide that information is from training with specialists. Schools usually have psychologists or a health consultant that can really provide that literacy and help teachers and parents also to separate what is good information and useful information from what is misleading information. So recommendations of books, training programs, really a space to share experience and share strategies. Those are not difficult interventions to structure in school environments. They have staff. They can have access to external staff if there's no psychologist or health professional inside. So I think this could really be helpful. When I am in my working environment, a school, a university, a college, whatever, I can have that information from my colleagues, from other peer teachers maybe, and from health professionals like psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors, health educators, and we really can build a network of good information. So if I'm interested in the subject, I can read something in my free time. I can go to an event, to a course. Of course, I can do that, but I need to be provided with good information that helps my work in my work environment. So the training part, I think it would be the best way to provide that literacy. And in terms of goals, I mean, what do I want to achieve from that mental health education? Deconstruct the myths about mental health. Like for instance, mental health doesn't affect children, or it's a personal issue only and doesn't matter to the larger community. It's a family or an individual thing and has to be addressed by the individual or only by his or her family. And that's not true. I mean, we can create, again, a network of good information and good practices in the whole school environment and community. So it's treatable. And one of the myths is that mental health diseases or pathologies, you can really not do anything about it. And that's a mistake. Of course, we can do a lot of things about it, and we can do things really early. Especially, we cannot prevent those things from happening, or we cannot, or it's not important to address mental health until something happens in terms of mental, like we have to wait for something to be broken, then we can fix it instead of, okay, how can we improve the conditions to that individual, maybe not broke anything, never broke anything. So I don't need to wait for my heart condition to do my exercises, to eat well, to have good healthy habits. I mean, I'm preventing my heart from being sick. And we usually don't think that way about mental health. If someone is not suffering, so everything is all right, we don't need to do anything. We don't need to talk about it. We don't need to improve good habits. We don't need to suggest ways to feel even better, to have even more energy, to have even more meaning in our activities. So that's really preventive from mental health difficulties and suffering in the future. So we can do that, and literacy can provide us with those kinds of information, and they could be really helpful.
Thank you very much.
That was a very insightful response. Thank you so much, Marucia. That kind of leads me on to the next question, where in one of our interviews during this project, we talked to a private school who had a very well-funded mental health infrastructure, where they had teachers who were properly trained in analyzing and assessing the mental health situation of students, and even if they had problems, what kind of problems they were and what would be some of the effective ways to treat it. They had a lot of counselors and psychologists available for those students to get help. However, this is not the case in most places, and often in schools there's an undue focus on academics, even if it is not the primary issue for the students. How do you think teachers can more effectively understand the different dimensions of mental health issues, starting from preventative issues to issues that are minor and can be solved by small measures that the teachers themselves and in groups can take with the students, or whether those problems are severe and need to be treated by a professional psychologist?
Very nice question, Vanchhit. I think we always talk in terms of level and frequency and intensity. We can have one episode of something, but it's really intense and important and have a great impact on different dimensions in our lives. And we can have, on the other hand, a lot of not so intense situations, but constantly happening, and then they can have the same impact. Or it's not a question what is worse or not, but how can we recognize that something is not okay with my peer teacher or with a student or with myself, and how much do I know about getting help and levels of help and strategies that I can use myself, or other interventions that request a professional and expertise person. So I think, of course, the model you just described is really ideal, to have an environment that has staff prepared and well-trained staff to deal with difficult situations, having teachers and maybe even parents empowered with good information and the possibility to recognize really early in an early stage those alert signs and red flags. Then we can talk about them right now. But we know that the reality of 90% of the school environments is really not that one. So that's why we really insist in the need of information and training for those parents and teachers. Talking about the dimensions, of course, I can have well-being difficulties, or I can be struggling with something that affects my mood and my energy and my emotions and make me vulnerable to other difficulties. And those problems can have their origin and in a family issue, a divorce, conflict environment at home, difficulties with, drugs or alcohol or any other situation like that. They can have origin in my academic results, bad results, difficulties with learning, hyperactivity, or any other learning disabilities. They can have origin and some personal vulnerability, organic meaning. But for the external individuals, teachers, really knowing where does it come from is not that important, in my view, of course. The most important is recognizing that something is not okay, and being available to address that not okay situation. Then in the future, we can try to figure what or where does that come from. But in the beginning, knowing that someone is not feeling okay and is struggling with something, it's suffering for any reason, it's more important than knowing what reason is that. So recognizing the signs, as you were saying, it's really important. And what is a sign that is something is not okay? Change of behavior. Any changes in the way that person communicates, behaves, concentrates, the changes in their achievement, and this is really easily identified in a school environment, because we usually know that children, those students, for a long time. So we can recognize, this is not the way this student used to, play with others or study or participate in the classroom. It can be lower concentration, perception. Used to be a very focused and disciplined student, and now kinds of has no concentration, is distracted, cannot pay attention to the activities, is a student gets isolated, and that's not the normal behavior. Was someone that really used to be around other students and participate in group activities and really enjoy those activities. And now it's kind of isolating himself or herself from those same groups or activities, is having behavior that is like kind of rebellious or aggressive. And that's really not that same student pattern for the times before. I see any changes in specific changes in my students. Really a mood swing, a crying student, a student who cries, with some frequency, or gets aggressive with some frequency, or doesn't want to be in classroom. It's an absent, keeps not showing up for a time. It's isolating, has low concentration, it's getting bad results. Those are really signs that something is not okay with that student. And sometimes teachers do observe that and just think about it, and they can be concerned, but not really feel the confidence or know if it's proper or not proper to approve the student. And even if the teacher thinks that it's appropriate to approach the student, doesn't know how, or doesn't have the confidence to know what to say or what to do. So, and especially with the youngest students, because the change of behavior sometimes is even more detectable. Adolescents can really sometimes put that suffering or that struggling in the shadow, and though they don't show that much, but even then we can have those same signs of alert, especially not showing up and isolating and having aggressive or more rejective behavior towards others or teachers. But in young children, it's really more detectable because they are more action. They express externally more what's happening inside than adolescents, for norm, not in specific cases, but most of the cases. So this is also information. This is also literacy. What are the signs that we can be alert to and observe? Change of behavior and those kinds of change. in the children's and the students' behavior. So this is the first thing. If I know that can be just not a mood thing or a personality trait, this can mean that something is happening there with that young children or with that adolescent, with that student. I feel more confident to be able to help.